Ibrahim Traore arrived in Moscow, and what happened next stunned the world. From his dramatic arrival to his striking presence at the heart of Russia's most symbolic military celebration, this wasn't just another diplomatic visit. This was history being made before our eyes. What are the hidden moments you missed? What signals did his every move send to world powers watching closely? Let's break it all down. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why Ibrahim Traore is becoming the most talked about African leader on the world stage today. So stay with us, and let us know in the comments which of these 5 shocking moments surprised you most.
When Captain Ibrahim Traore, the young, defiant leader of Burkina Faso, touched down in Moscow, few could have predicted what was about to unfold. What was initially seen as just another diplomatic visit quickly turned into a series of jaw-dropping, behind-the-scenes developments that sent ripples through African, Russian, and Western intelligence communities alike.
Ibrahim Traore made an entrance in full military camouflage. Not a jacket draped over it. Not a diplomatic blazer. Just raw, unapologetic battle gear. Why? Because it wasn't a fashion statement. It was a warning. Traore wasn't there to impress with elegance. He came to declare that he is still in the trenches, still in the fight, still armed. And that message echoed far beyond Red Square. To his supporters back home in Burkina Faso, it was a reminder that their leader hasn't abandoned the revolution.
The red carpet was rolled out, but so were the hidden agendas. From classified military talks and secret energy deals to an unexpected encounter that rattled Kremlin insiders. Traore's presence in Russia wasn't just symbolic, it was a power move on a global scale.
He's under fire. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've seen the captain, interim president, we've seen how there's been this plot against him, where they plotted to assassinate him and to overturn what's been going on in Burkina Faso. And we've seen, and this is really important and kind of some of the things that I cover in the book, is how this isn't just some small, isolated, internal thing. This is yet again how Western imperial powers are intervening in Africa and using other African leaders, other African countries to try and undermine what's going on. This is a time, and I talk about this extensively in the book, where we really have to get behind this shift that's taking place in Africa, and why it's so important that the interim president is in Moscow right now. This really feels like a kind of almost like a Bandung moment, where you've got this gathering of all of these global majority countries who are turning up in Moscow and are saying, you know what, this is a statement from us about what we believe in, and that it's time for something new. So all of these nations, despite the threats that are being made against some of them, even the Serbian Prime Minister was threatened by the European Union. If you dare to go to Moscow and dare to celebrate Victory Day in Moscow, we will somehow sanction you.
And while most mainstream headlines stayed quiet, those watching closely saw clear signs of a growing anti-Western alliance, new commitments forged in silence, and subtle warnings delivered without a single word. In this deep dive, we're uncovering the shocking things that happened behind closed doors during Traore's visit. Moments you won't find on the evening news. This is more than diplomacy. It's geopolitics at its most dangerous and electric. Get ready, because the truth is more explosive than anyone expected. Putin's personal jet, a diplomatic power move. When Captain Ibrahim Traore landed in Moscow, it wasn't just politics, it was theater. The Russian president, Vladimir Putin, sent his own private jet to personally pick up the young Burkinabe leader. That's not some ordinary gesture. That's the kind of thing reserved for VIPs, allies, or people who matter big time in the global picture. This wasn't about logistics, it was about making a statement. Putin was telling the world, this guy, he's with us now. Traoré, known for snubbing Western influence, showed up in Russia as if stepping onto a new world stage. It screamed partnership. It screamed power shift. And in Moscow, optics matter just as much as strategy. The private jet wasn't just a ride, it was a sign that Burkina Faso is no longer dancing to the West's beat. Traoré's arrival in Putin's plane lit up headlines and left diplomats from other countries raising their eyebrows. Armed and unapologetic, Traoré's bold statement. As soon as Traoré stepped off that jet, all eyes were on him, not just because of where he landed, but how. He was visibly armed. A brown leather holster hugged his waist, carrying a sidearm most world leaders would never bring to a formal international event. And let's be real, it wasn't an accident. In diplomacy, everything is calculated. That holster, that weapon, it was a statement of independence, strength, and self-sufficiency. Traoré was saying, "I'm not here to play your game, I brought my own rules." Russia didn't bat an eye, but Western observers were shocked. It broke the conventional image of a leader in a suit shaking hands behind velvet ropes. This was a man who leads from the battlefield, not a boardroom. The pistol on his hip might as well have been a megaphone, announcing to the world that Burkina Faso's leader answers to no one, and that intimidation doesn't faze him.
It's not random, it's strategic, it's calculated. But with Traoré, there was something deeper, a shared worldview, a common defiance. Two nations separated by continents, yet bonded by the scars of struggle and the will to rise. Traoré represents a new Africa, a raw Africa, an unapologetic Africa, and Russia sees that. They didn't just roll out the carpet, they opened their arms.
Stealing the spotlight, Traoré's magnetic presence. In a crowd full of powerful presidents, decorated generals, and polished diplomats, it was Ibrahim Traoré who owned the stage. His presence at Russia's Victory Day celebration wasn't just a diplomatic appearance, it was a show-stealing performance. His youth, his militant style, and his confidence drew the cameras like magnets. He wasn't stiff or scripted. He looked comfortable, even at ease, among global giants. Traoré didn't just blend into the background, he stood out, unapologetically. While other leaders wore tailored suits and rehearsed smiles, Traoré's military gear, firm stance, and bold aura told a different story. He wasn't just representing Burkina Faso, he was representing a new wave of African leadership. Fierce, unfiltered, and sovereign. Social media buzzed, journalists scrambled, and suddenly everyone wanted to know more about the young revolutionary from Burkina Faso walking around Moscow like he belonged. And judging by the cameras, maybe he did. High security escort, Russia's protective embrace. Right after Traoré landed, the level of security around him was jaw-dropping. Russia didn't treat him like just another visiting official. They treated him like someone they were ready to protect at all costs. Military-grade convoys, elite guards, and a protocol usually reserved for presidents of nuclear powers followed him throughout his visit. Why the extreme measures? Simple, it was about trust and message. Russia wanted to signal they were all in on their partnership with Traoré. Protecting him wasn't just about safety, it was about symbolism. Traoré represents a break from Western ties in Africa, and Russia's ready to shield that shift. It also sent a warning to others. This leader is under our watch now. For Traoré, the high-level escort offered something deeper. Credibility on the world stage. Security says value. And Moscow clearly sees the Burkina Faso captain as an investment in Africa's future and a frontline voice in the growing divide between East and West.
Putin understood the importance of discretion, and Traoré, seeking to reclaim control over his nation, found this method appealing. He was not interested in courting media attention. He sought to carve out an autonomous path for Burkina Faso, free from the burdens of oversight. Russia's engagement gradually unfolded through a series of assertive diplomatic and military maneuvers, confirming a strategic pivot away from Western dependency. This shift toward an alliance with Russia represented not only a rejection of the past, but also a bold recalibration of Burkina Faso's future on the global stage.
A message to the West, realigning global alliances. Let's call it what it is. Traoré's arrival in Moscow was a thunderous middle finger to the West. After years of Burkina Faso relying on European military aid and economic policy, Traoré took a sharp turn. Showing up in Russia didn't just represent a diplomatic trip, it symbolized a shift in alliances. Traoré is tired of being told what to do by the same powers that colonized and manipulated his country for decades. He's part of a growing wave of African leaders rejecting Western dominance. In Moscow, he was embraced, not patronized. He didn't come begging for support, he came as a partner. And the world noticed. From Washington to Paris, whispers turned into full-on concern. This wasn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. It was about a broader revolt against old systems. The West suddenly realized their grip is slipping, and Traoré's handshake with Putin might just become a blueprint for others.
Поздравляю вас с 80-й годовщиной победы в Великой Отечественной войне!
Today, we gather not just to celebrate a moment in history, but to shine a powerful spotlight on two remarkable leaders. Captain Ibrahim Traore, the fearless president of Burkina Faso, and President Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation. These two men, one representing the rising spirit of Africa, and the other standing tall for a resurgent Eurasia, are walking side by side into a new world order that challenges domination, uplifts sovereignty, and restores dignity. We are talking about the majestic, powerful, and deeply symbolic 80th anniversary of the Great Victory, Russia's Victory Day, marking the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945. And guess what? Captain Ibrahim Traore was there. He wasn't just a guest. He was a distinguished guest, a brother, an honored ally. So today, in this episode, we pay homage, we celebrate, and we take pride. Burkina Faso is rising, Africa is rising, and it is walking shoulder to shoulder with Russia. Victory Day, May 9th, a sacred day in Russia. A day that echoes with the memory of millions who gave their lives to defeat the darkest force of the 20th century, Nazism. The Great Patriotic War, as Russians call it, wasn't just about soldiers. It was about civilians, workers, mothers, children, and entire communities who stood up, resisted, and emerged victorious. For 80 years, Russia has remembered this day with passion. In 2025, the 80th anniversary wasn't just a celebration. It was a global message. It was a reminder that true sovereignty must be defended, that unity must be cherished, and that history must never be forgotten. It was in this spirit that President Putin extended invitations to trusted partners across the world, leaders who understand the meaning of dignity, struggle, and national pride. Among these leaders stood Captain Ibrahim Traore. His presence was a symbol, a signal, a loud, proud voice of African independence. When the plane carrying the president of Burkina Faso landed on the tarmac in Moscow, it carried with it not just a head of state, but the heartbeat of a revolution in Africa. Captain Ibrahim Traore arrived as a representative of the Confederation of Sahel States. He arrived as a Pan-Africanist, as a patriot, as a brother in struggle. He was welcomed with honor, with respect, and with strategic recognition, because Russia knows what Africa is becoming, because Putin sees the potential, because Moscow recognizes the courage of African nations like Burkina Faso that have dared to say no more to neo-colonialism, foreign interference, and economic dependency.
The symbolism of Victory Day, rewriting historical narratives. Russia's Victory Day isn't your average parade. It's a powerful, emotional display of triumph over fascism, and it's packed with layers of meaning. When Traoré stood beside Russian officials on that day, it wasn't just for photo ops. He inserted himself into a storyline of resistance and victory. For a young African leader rising from a nation once colonized and exploited, Victory Day offered more than history. It offered narrative control. Traoré aligned himself with a moment of defiance, strength, and rebirth. By participating, he wasn't just honoring Soviet sacrifices, he was also framing Burkina Faso's modern struggle for sovereignty as part of a larger, noble fight against imperialism. It was brilliant political theater, message? We've got our own battles, and we're winning them too. Victory Day suddenly felt like a global stage for Traoré to present his revolution not as rebellion, but as righteousness. And he made sure the whole world was watching. Media frenzy, Traoré's global impact. When the photos of Traoré armed and confident in Moscow hit the airwaves, global media couldn't get enough. News anchors debated him. Social platforms lit up with curiosity and praise. The media loves a new story, and Traoré provided exactly that. A charismatic, fearless African leader flipping the script on traditional diplomacy. He didn't speak much, but his visuals did all the talking. His mere presence challenged assumptions, forced uncomfortable questions, and inspired admiration from youth across Africa and beyond. Why is a man from a small West African nation drawing more coverage than European leaders? Because Traoré brings energy. He brings disruption. He doesn't follow the script, and that makes him a media magnet. Headlines asked, "Who is this revolutionary in Moscow?" Suddenly, Burkina Faso wasn't just a landlocked country in Africa. It was on the map, in bold. And Traoré? He was the headline, not just in Russia, but across the globe. The future of Burkina Faso-Russia relations. A strategic partnership. Traoré's visit wasn't a one-off handshake. It was the start of something bigger. The growing connection between Burkina Faso and Russia points toward long-term cooperation in military training, weapons deals, and infrastructure development. For a country battling jihadist insurgency and economic instability, having a strong partner like Russia could be a game changer. This isn't just about ideology, it's about survival and strategy. Russia, facing isolation from the West, is eager to expand its influence across Africa. Traoré sees that and is leveraging it to gain support that comes without Western strings attached. It's a two-way street. Russia gains a foothold in West Africa, and Burkina Faso gets resources and respect. This evolving partnership is a new chapter in geopolitics, one where former colonies set their own terms, backed by global heavyweights not tied to old alliances. If handled wisely, Traoré could turn this Moscow moment into decades of progress for his country.
We are diving deep into the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. Since seizing power in September 2022, Traoré has become a significant figure in African politics, sparking both hope and concern. Today, we'll look at what has made him the most loved leader on the African continent, the hurdles he faces, and the turbulent political landscape of this Sahel nation. Burkina Faso, a landlocked country in West Africa, has a history marked by political instability. In recent years, it has been battling a growing Islamist insurgency, a crisis that ultimately led to the ousting of President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore in January 2022, followed by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, and finally, the rise of Captain Ibrahim Traore. At just 34 years old upon taking office, Traoré became the world's youngest head of state, igniting considerable interest and anticipation across the continent. Traoré declared a state of emergency, vowing to tackle the security crisis and adhere to a transition timetable for a return to democracy. But what has his leadership truly entailed? Let's explore the progress and achievements under his tenure. Despite the ongoing security challenges, Burkina Faso has reportedly experienced economic growth under Traoré. The gross domestic product has seen an increase from approximately $18.8 billion to $22.1 billion. In 2024, GDP growth was estimated at 4%, primarily driven by the services and agriculture sectors. This growth indicates a degree of resilience in the face of adversity. A significant move towards financial autonomy was the reported clearance of Burkina Faso's $4.7 billion external debt. This has been attributed to prudent financial management and increased revenue from resources like gold. Furthermore, Traoré's administration has taken a bold stance by rejecting financial assistance from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, emphasizing the nation's capacity for self-driven development.
Domestic implications, Traoré's rising popularity. While the international spotlight focused on Traoré's bold presence in Moscow, back home in Burkina Faso, he was being celebrated like a rock star. His trip wasn't just foreign policy, it was fuel for national pride. Supporters flooded the streets with praise. Young people in particular felt empowered seeing one of their own stands tall among the world's most powerful leaders. Traoré's choice to reject Western pressure and embrace alternatives speaks volumes to a population tired of broken promises. His military background gives him grassroots credibility, and this trip just turbocharged his domestic approval. By appearing strong and independent abroad, he tightened his grip on power at home. It's not just about politics, it's emotional. People are hungry for sovereignty, dignity, and a future where Burkina Faso isn't bullied by outside forces. With this move, Traoré became more than a leader. He became a symbol, and symbols are hard to dethrone. A new chapter in global diplomacy, the rise of non-Western alliances. Traoré's Moscow arrival marks a seismic shift, not just for Burkina Faso, but for diplomacy itself. For too long, world politics revolved around a Western core. Now, emerging nations are flipping the script. Traoré's presence in Moscow, armed, proud, and welcomed, highlights how leaders from the global south are building their own alliances on their own terms. It's not just Russia either. China, Iran, Turkey. They're all stepping into roles once dominated by the US and Europe. Traoré's visit signals the start of a diplomatic rebellion. The next generation of African leadership isn't asking permission anymore. They're demanding partnership. And in that new reality, loyalty is shifting. No more aid for obedience. It's now power for power. Traoré represents a model of leadership that's hard to ignore. Fearless, unapologetic, and global. In Moscow, he didn't just represent Burkina Faso. He represented a new world order that's rising fast and rewriting the rules of engagement. Captain Ibrahim Traore didn't just visit Moscow, he made a statement. In just a matter of hours, we witnessed a whirlwind of secret meetings, power exchanges, and whispered deals that are already shifting the balance of influence across West Africa and beyond. Russia sees in Traoré more than just a young revolutionary. They see an opportunity, a frontline partner in a broader strategy to counter NATO influence, to gain a foothold in Africa's resource-rich Sahel region, and to reshape post-colonial power dynamics. And Traoré? He's not playing by the old rules. He walked into Moscow not as a beggar, but as a bold strategist, rewriting alliances, forging new narratives, and showing the world that Burkina Faso will no longer be a pawn in foreign games. But the real question is, what comes next? Will this partnership ignite a broader African realignment? Or will it provoke retaliation from those who feel their grip loosening? You've just heard what the headlines missed. Now it's your turn. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. Because in the world of silent wars and shifting alliances, the next move could shake the world. Stay alert. The Traoré era is just beginning.